Ya, mi pregunta tiene que ver con qué posibilidades de que él nos pueda mostrar algunas armas, si es que tiene armas ahí, Juan.
Yeah. Do you have some weapons that you can show us and tell a little bit about it?
Sure. So I will start with my spear.
Comienza con la lanza.
So this is something you would see used by the Azande people of Sudan.
De Sudán, de los Hassan.
The wings here are when you stab somebody and you pull it out, organs come with it.
Wow.
Los salidos son para cuando apuñalas y sacar la parte interior de los órganos o lo que hay, para desmembrar. Sí.
Here I have, this is my stick that I use for Egyptian stick fighting. For tahtir, it is rattan. The ones that they used in battle were actually a hard palm wood called nabut, but this is softer, more flexible. So when you hit somebody, they don't die.
Ese bastón es del que usa para tahtir, está hecho de ratán, y cuando se usaba tradicionalmente en guerra se usaba una madera más dura, pero en este caso para la práctica, si es que golpeas a alguien, tiene menos riesgos de accidente o de muerte.
So this is basically a knife. It can be called a kanjar, or it's kind of a mix between a kanjar and a jambia.
Eso es un cuchillo, una mezcla entre un kanjar y un cambia.
So you use this when you get close and you're wrestling.
Y eso se usa en distancia corta en lucha.
And you use it for stabbing in between where the armor is.
Y se usa para apuñalar entre la armadura.
Okay.
You can also pair it with the shield. So this is a doll. This is originally from India, but the style it's made in is used in Africa and the Middle East.
Ahora va a pasar al escudo. Ese escudo lo tuvo de India, pero el estilo de tipo de escudo viene desde África y el Medio Oriente.
So you'll see here in the back, it's actually strapped with rope.
Se ve cómo está agarrado atrás con cuerda.
So what you can do is you can put it up your arm and you can use it to shoot a bow.
Y lo puedes dejar más arriba y usarlo igual para lanzar con un arco.
You can also, if I can get my hand out, use it to hold the knife in the other hand as well.
Yeah. Y puedes poner el arma en otra mano también. Can you put also like I have seen in Indian martial arts where they combine that kind of shield with the daga and they put it together like in the same.
Yes, it's very similar. A lot of that comes from an influence from Persia. So the Persians do it, and they had a major influence on the martial arts of India and the Middle East and North Africa. So this is why, for example, if I have weapons from India, some of them are very similar to what is used in Africa. So that's why I can, for example, use this Indian shield because I can use it in the same way that I would use the African one.
Ya, le pregunté como un paréntesis por el tema del cuchillo, si es que se usaba harto el escudo con daga como en India. Y dice que muchas cosas vinieron desde Persia al norte de África y a India, por lo tanto hay muchas cosas que son comunes a ambos. Por ejemplo, el escudo que él tiene, que pese a que viene de India, él lo utiliza en la lógica africana. Please continue. Thank you.
So this is my armor. It's made with leather.
Su armadura está hecha de cuero.
You can see it's made with scales. And what's good about this is when it's really, really hot, I don't cook.
Okay. Dice que está hecha de esa manera y que cuando hace mucho calor, por dentro no se cocina el mismo. O sea, no mantiene el calor. Yeah.
This type of armor is very easy to fix because you can undo the straps on the inside and replace the scale.
Ok. Dice que son fáciles de arreglar porque cambias la pieza soltando las cuerdas interiores.
Ah, ok.
Well, it's good. It's better for protecting against cuts than it is against thrusts.
Es
But
mejor protegiendo cortes que puñaladas.
but the style of fighting has a lot more cutting than thrusting. So this is perfect for that.
Pero para el estilo que practica, que tiene más corte que punzazo, esa armadura es apropiada.
Ah, ok.
And I'll show you some of my training weapons.
Okay. Voy a mostrar unas armas de entrenamiento.
So this is a training sword based on a Mamluk saber from the 1200s.
Esa está basada en un sable de los 1200.
What you'll notice here is this piece here. They call it a yelman, and this is used for cuts with the back of the sword.
Nice.
It also makes thrusting easier.
Esa pieza está hecha para hacer cortes con la parte posterior de la espada.
So those are some examples of some of the weapons that I use.
Nice. Esos son algunos ejemplos de las armas que usa. Yeah, very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have seen Damon Thit does many weapons. So you got it from him or you collect separate different parts?
I get all of my training weapons from Damon Thit.
Ok, sí. Le pregunté solo como un continuación de eso, cortito, si esas armas las tenía de Damon Thit, porque yo había visto que él las hacía. So, my next question is regarding, I don't know, when I knew about African martial arts was with Guru Clifford Stewart. So he taught me Silat, but he also was into African martial arts. But he told me about Kilindi Iyi. So I have seen many videos of Kilindi Iyi. I don't know how to refer to him because many people put different titles to him, so I just use the name. But he shows, and I have seen. It's also I practice Silat, so it's kind of the same, the dance and the martial art. But he has a video where he shows the dance, then he shows martial arts. What do you think is the importance of the mixture of? I think in all times, everything what kind of mixed. Dancing was martial arts. Was dancing also was spiritual because Kilindi also very spiritual men, as far as I know. So, what do you think is the influence of dancing, martial arts, dancing culture? But mainly with martial arts. But in Africa, it's very, you can see it a lot in Africa.
Absolutely. So there are three things to consider. Before I get into that, we'll just note that different cultures approach it differently. So you have martial arts for the common people, and then you have martial arts for the elites. Okay. So what I mean by that is, we take Egypt as an example. In Egypt, in medieval Egypt, you had martial traditions where you had formal teachers, you had maestros who would actually run schools for members of the noble classes. You have books that are written that are specifically for the knightly class. And so for them, they'll have a much more formal environment to learn. But for common people who don't have access to education, who may not have access to some of the schools, who didn't learn how to read, the way for them to learn is through dance. And
can I translate until that point so I don't miss information, please? Le pregunté si, bueno, para mencionar también, yo aprendí, me enteré de la arte marcial africana a través de Guru Clifford Stewart, que me comentó sobre Kilindi Iyi. Y en algunos videos de Kilindi Iyi, él está bailando y luego hace la aplicación de la danza. Por lo tanto, le pregunté cuál era la importancia de la danza en las artes marciales africanas. Y está diciendo que para comenzar hay que hacer dos divisiones. Se enseñaban las artes marciales para la gente noble y para la gente común. La gente noble, por ejemplo, da el ejemplo de Egipto. La gente noble tenía maestros, tenía gente específica, tenían manuales, tenían escuelas para educarse sobre las artes marciales. Pero la gente que no tenía acceso a esa comodidades o a esos beneficios, gente que tal vez tampoco sabía leer, muchas veces aprendía las artes marciales a través de la danza. Please continue.
So what you end up having is people who will have dances. So in Egypt, where you have people practicing, for example, tahtib, today, a lot of the techniques are buried in the dances that they do. In other places, it's a religious component or a spiritual component. So you have lamb wrestlers in Senegal, where you have the lead up to the wrestling, you have all of this dancing and the singing. You see men wearing amulets from the from their traditional priests, wearing certain costumes, and these are all expressions of the cultural aspect of it. It can't be separated. And so music and dancing all over the continent, even in Latin America, you see examples of dance being involved in the martial art or in training the martial art.
Dance and religion. So it was more like a fighting was part of the essential part of the community. It's dance, religion, fighting is almost the same, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. Let me translate. Entonces dice que bueno, ese es el ejemplo en un caso, pero en otros casos también hay un tema espiritual de los bailes que llevan después a los combates. Entonces tiene un aspecto que puede ser social, un aspecto que también puede ser espiritual, y que la música y el baile están presentes en todos los aspectos de las artes marciales africanas, y también se ve en Sudamérica, como lo podemos ver en capoeira o en ciertos estilos también en Venezuela, que a veces acompañan con ciertas músicas. Y le pregunté como para cerrar un poco si es que básicamente pelear era una parte esencial de la cultura, o sea, era el combate, el baile, la música y la religión eran parte de lo mismo, no era tan separado como lo vemos hoy en día. Something else about that, or we go to the next question?
We can go to the next question.
Okay, podemos pasar a la próxima pregunta.
Ya, la siguiente pregunta es, él actualmente está dando clases por el tema, bueno, no sé cómo está el tema de la pandemia. ¿Dónde está residiendo él? ¿De dónde vive?
De dónde vive y se hace clases.
Claro.
It's a double question. Where do you live? And are you teaching? Are you doing classes? Do you have a school?
So I live just outside of Toronto in Canada.
Okay.
I was teaching before COVID happened. So
yeah, like everyone.
So right now I'm not teaching. I don't have a school per se, but when things open up, I'll be looking to teach at some of the local multidisciplinary schools.
Okay.
I have done and do classes online. So right now I do teach one person online. I do have some pre-recorded online classes on the HAMA Facebook page. So for anybody who wanted an introduction into the arts that I study, I do have a 4-part series for that. But I'm always open to taking on students. Just COVID makes that very difficult.
Yeah. Bueno, dice que él vive afuera de Toronto, en Canadá, que estaba haciendo clases hasta que comenzó el tema del COVID, que por ahora no está enseñando, tiene algunos alumnos online, y que la gente que esté interesada puede ver la página HAMA, después vamos a dejar el link, hay algunos videos ahí introductorios, y que él está abierto a tomar alumnos online.
Okay.
So my next question is coming to the more modern age and maybe Western culture. You see some expressions that are associated maybe to Africans or African Americans, like maybe 52 blocks. I don't know if you agree that goes back to Egypt, or you are from the idea is only from jail, but also you have nowadays very popular sports in Africa where they do martial arts, like you mentioned Senegalese wrestling, very, very, very famous, very good. I think I don't want to miss the name, but maybe Dambe is the name, with the fist fight and the other hand.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's your opinion on modern kind of going to the sports, maybe going to when the transition, it's a big question. Is the influence about it in modern sports, and also as sport itself in Africa. So how do you see the modern in the modern expression?
First off, I want to say that I love seeing the fact that they are now turning these martial arts into big ticket sports. I love it. You have, there is a wrestler by the name of Didier Bombardier. He was a fisherman 10 years ago. Now the man is worth over $20 million because of Senegalese wrestling.
Yeah, nice.
So it's giving an opportunity to people who may not have other opportunities otherwise.
And you have also in UFC, I don't remember the name right now, heavyweight. He went to France and then Zingano?
Rug.
Okay, yeah. And Zingano also comes from Africa, right?
Yeah, he's from Senegal, I think.
Yeah. Very strong and very, very athletic.
Very athletic.
Yeah, please continue. I'm sorry for the interruption.
It's okay. But this is what I want to see more of. I want to see more people like African Fighters Championships. I want to see Dambe Warriors. I want to see Senegalese wrestling. In Madagascar, they are doing the same with kickboxing. In Trinidad and Tobago, Kalinda stick fighting is now being more professionalized. Capoeira was doing this from years ago.
Yeah.
And it's good to see because the arts need to survive. And the only way they're going to survive is if they are adapted to a new world. So I want to see more of them in UFC. I want to see African martial arts of the various kinds to be as far spread as Taekwondo schools. I want to see them everywhere. However they can make that happen, and as long as they're staying true to the art.
Yeah, okay. Le pregunté por qué opinaba él por las artes marciales africanas hoy en día, transformándose en deporte, en parte de la cultura moderna, en ciertos aspectos en la cultura occidental, pero por ejemplo el Dambe, que es un deporte en que se pelea con un brazo como escudo y otro golpea, o la lucha senegalesa, y me dice que está muy contento de ver cómo ha ido explotando eso, creciendo, que la gente puede, incluso hay luchadores, nombró un luchador senegalés que ahora es millonario y que partió siendo un pescador, que se han transformado en grandes eventos y que han ido creciendo, y que a él le gustaría que a su vez eso se expandiera por el mundo y que fueran tan populares como el taekwondo y que pudieran vender tickets y ser grandes artes marciales. Y entre medio yo le comenté también que había algunas personas de origen africano que habían llegado incluso a la UFC muy atléticos, como Zingano, yo recuerdo, por ejemplo. Así que eso, pero su visión es esa, que ha ido creciendo mucho, que se está transformando en espectáculos grandes y que espera que eso siga expandiéndose por todo el mundo.
Oye, Juan, pregúntale si él cree que falta muchos más programas, series, o en este caso, información para que la gente se interese un poco más de la historia y también de la arte marcial africana, porque por ejemplo yo recuerdo que lo que más cercano que teníamos nosotros, bueno, que se conoce también que hay una arte marcial africana que se llama Zulu, pero uno lo asocia a Chaka Zulu de la serie, ¿te acuerdas? Entonces,
sí.
Pero pregúntale si a él le interesaría o le gustaría que hubiera más información en ese sentido.
Yeah. Do you think it's not too much information about African culture and martial arts in general? Because for us, he mentioned the only like TV series that might show it that we have seen is Chaka Zulu from the Zulu. So, but we don't have too many influence that it's not something common that you would see on TV or on magazines, or even martial arts interview is not a big deal. How do you feel about that? Obviously you would like to have more, but how do you feel about that?
I think we're changing now. Years ago, the very idea that there were martial arts in Africa would be laughed at by some people. I think, and I'll try to keep it simple. Hollywood has not been very good to African martial arts in general. Movies in general have not been very good to it. And I say this because I'll give you the example of this movie that I saw in the 90s. I loved it as a kid, but I hate it as an adult. It's called it's Quest, this movie where Jean-Claude Van Damme, basically, it's the same plot as Bloodsport. He goes to this place and fights a bunch of international stereotypes. Now, every country had its own guy that represented the nation or the culture. And yes, the stereotypes were terrible, but then they come to Africa and they don't give you a country, they don't give you a culture, they just give you some guy who's wearing a mix of Zulu clothes and Igbo clothes. They say Africa, and then he has no fighting style.
Yeah.
And this is how African warriors were presented in Hollywood, unless they were from Egypt. And then but then they tried to separate Egypt from the rest of Africa.
I agree with that. Yeah.
So I'm seeing some changes now. For example, we have movies like Ginga, La Reina de Angola, the Portuguese movie that came out a couple of years ago. You have the Shaka Zulu TV show. There was a Venezuelan movie some years ago showing machete fighting of South America. So it's getting better, and I want to see it do better because the knowledge and the expertise is there and the interest is growing.
Okay. Dice que sí, que bueno, básicamente Hollywood no ha sido muy bueno con las artes marciales africanas, que siempre ha sido con mala información y pocas apariciones, y nombra él una película que a él le gustaba desde chico, cuando chico, pero que no le gusta ahora cuando grande, que se llama The Quest, Jean-Claude Van Damme, que tiene que ir a combatir con distintas personas de distintos países. Y cuando toca África, dicen África, no dicen qué país, qué estilo, solo África, y hay una persona media disfrazada entre Zulu y otras etnias, y no tiene un estilo tampoco, está haciendo cualquier cosa. Entonces dice que se ha dado mucha esa mala información y que África es como un genérico, a menos que se hable de Egipto, pero cuando se habla de Egipto, siempre tratan de separarlo de África, tratan de hacer ver que Egipto no es África, que es como que hay una separación, como que los africanos no pudieran tener esa civilización y esa riqueza. Por lo tanto, cree que está mejorando, sí, de todas maneras, que han habido algunas nuevas producciones que son más interesantes y se está empezando a mostrar, pero cree que falta mucho todavía.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe you need like a African Bruce Lee to break the door in. Yeah.
We're trying.
So, yeah. Le digo como chiste que a lo mejor necesitan un Bruce Lee africano que rompa esas barreras raciales y imponga las cosas. Porque Bruce Lee hizo lo mismo con los asiáticos. So I have two main questions that I don't want to miss, but I'm going to start by the first one. Again, I want to send some greetings to a friend, Alejandro, about this question. Very interesting to me, I don't know if you can talk about it, the Zulu spear, the Ikwa, and the use of it with a shield is very interesting to me because it's a short spear, but very useful. So I'm interested, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, I can talk a bit about the history. So the Zulu spear is called the Ishwa. And it's called Ishwa because that's the sound it makes going in and out of your opponent.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
It was invented by Shaka Zulu during his time in the army fighting for a neighboring king before he actually took the throne of the Zulu. From the age of 14, he served in the military. And sort of the general idea of using it is you have this very big shield that's called Muni or Ishlongu. Ishlongu is the name of the shield. And so you take the big shield and you basically push it up against your opponent. You open his flank and you stab him. And you just rinse and repeat over and over and over again. And there are different ways to do it. You know, you can stab up here and all these other different places. But generally, that is the basic idea of how it's used. Imagine the way the Romans would use it.
I was thinking the same. I was thinking that I was going to ask you that question. It's parallel to the same idea with the short sword of the Romans, right?
Exactly. It's the same idea.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Entonces le pregunté y nuevamente le mandé un saludo a Alejandro porque le gusta mucho el tema de esta lanza. So how did you spell the name Islwa?
Equal. So it's IKLWA.
W-A, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Le pregunté sobre la lanza Islwa, que en particular a mí me interesa porque es una lanza corta muy particular de los Zulus. Y le pregunté cuál era su origen. Fue inventada por Chaka Zulu cuando estaba luchando contra otro no reino, pero otro sector de los Zulu antes de convertirse en rey. ¿Y cómo funciona esta lanza? Es que se utiliza con un escudo muy grande y tú presionas con el escudo y como es una lanza corta la vas usando por los bordes para apuñalar los flancos y después vas entrando y saliendo en repetidas veces. Y el nombre Ictua es por el sonido que hace cuando entra y sale.
Ah, ok. Sí.
Sí.
Juan, podemos preguntarle, por ejemplo, nosotros, bueno, por lo que se ve siempre, desde la cultura de África, siempre ellos tienen una condición física admirable. Yo creo que genéticamente. Por ejemplo, si él tuviera que enseñar a una persona que no tuviera esa genética, ellos tienen un programa como de condición física para poder hacer, en este caso, tener efectividad en lo que enseña.
He's asking, when we generally look to African people, they're very fit, maybe genetically very strong, very fit, good genetics, good physical. So is that very important when you do the martial arts? And when some people that is not on a good fitness way, so he's not out of shape, do you have a specific program of training to go in the martial arts that goes with the martial arts?
So what I will say is, I mean, people all over the world, you have strong people, you have big guys and small guys in every culture. Depending on the art, because different arts have different priorities. So for some of the wrestling arts, these guys are big and strong because they need to be big and strong. It's like American football, you know. But then you have other arts like Algerian stick fighting where you need to be fast. So the guys are a bit smaller, you know, they're not these big guys. So like any martial art, the training should be based on what you're trying to achieve. And training for the art in a way prepares you for that. So Senegalese wrestlers, as an example, they hit the gym hard. They lift a lot of weights, they cross train, they run, they do a lot of heavy weights. Whereas with Egyptian stick fighters, yes, there's going to be some weight work, but there's a lot more focus on flexibility, speed training, and endurance. So it really depends on what sport you're doing. You give the example of Muay Thai kickboxing versus, say, Jiu-Jitsu. The type of training you're going to do for each is going to be different because your goals are different.
Yeah. Bueno, dice que de partida en todas las culturas hay gente grande, gente chica, gente fuerte o no tanto, pero que el entrenamiento físico tiene más relación con la disciplina en la que te vayas a especializar. Por ejemplo, en la lucha tienes que ser muy fuerte, por lo tanto los luchadores, el ejemplo de los luchadores senegaleses, mucho levantamiento de pesa, mucha fuerza, corren un poco, pero a diferencia de la gente que hace lucha con bastones, necesitan ser más bien rápidos y flexibles, no fuertes y grandes. Entonces, hace el paralelo también entre Muay Thai y Jiu-Jitsu, no entrenan lo mismo. Para cada disciplina hay un entrenamiento particular en función de un buen desarrollo en el arte que estás ejecutando.
Juan, podría hacer la pregunta clásica.
¿No nos queda más tiempo? ¿Queda una? Tenía dos.
No, sí, dale.
Okay, so my other question is, I have two more questions, but I hope we can get it. Boxing. Do you? I named before 52 Blocks. I would love to know your feeling on that. Is that comes from Egypt, as some people say, or is that more modern, straight from the jail? But in general, boxing has been dominated by African descendant people. Boxing is always, they always have better moves, better performance in general. maybe not in the smaller categories, but in general, that they dominate that sport. Even from the beginning, we can go back to Johnson or others great boxers from the history. So how do you feel about African martial arts and boxing?
Well, boxing is part of African martial arts. And I'll explain. Because every culture has its own style of boxing. In Africa, for example, you have ancient Egyptian boxing, but then you also have an art from southern Central Africa called Musangwe, which is another style of bare knuckle boxing. In Senegalese wrestling, boxing is involved. In Madagascar, you have boxing. So every culture has a different style. With arts like 52 or other pugilistic arts in the Caribbean or Central America or whatever else, a lot of these were brought and mixed from the slaves that were brought over. What is important to remember is that many of these slaves were former soldiers. So a lot of these slaves in the very beginning of the slave trade were prisoners of war who were captured on the battlefield. So they took their training with them, which is why you have capoeira and machete bordon and 52 and knocking and kicking. You have these because these men brought these arts with them. And so it may not necessarily be that it came from Egypt, because while Egypt is very influential, it's important to remember that Egypt was also influenced by its neighbors. So I would say that there is definitely a continuity of tradition and priorities. If you look at, here's a good example. There's a style of boxing in America called slap boxing.
Yes.
If you look at slap boxing and you look at Musangwe, they look almost the same. So this is an example of that tradition that's carried over. I'll let you translate that because that's a lot to say.
Bueno, le pregunté por la influencia de las artes marciales, o sea, artes marciales africanas en el boxeo, porque se ve en general la gente de descendencia africana ha dominado el boxeo, sobre todo en las categorías más pesadas, en las más livianas tal vez no tanto, y también hay ciertos tipos de boxeo culturalmente que aparecieron, y le pregunté si eran parte de la cultura americana, si venían desde antes, como el 52 Blocks, que se asocia a los afroamericanos. Entonces, me dice que todas las culturas africanas tenían algún tipo de boxeo, y muchas de la gente que se llevó a América, Sudamérica, Centroamérica, eran prisioneros de guerra. Por lo tanto, ellos tenían conocimiento marcial, tenían conocimiento tanto del boxeo como de las armas. Por algo llegaron las armas y otras cosas, como él menciona el machete cordón, o como llegó Capoeira a Brasil, porque era gente que tenía instrucción marcial, que fueron algunos capturados en guerra y se llevaban y así pasaba la tradición marcial con esos esclavos. Y fue pasando de uno al otro, por lo tanto, sí hay una condición de la gente afrodescendiente a tener experiencia y ciertos conocimientos del boxeo. Yo había escuchado que el 52 Blocks la gente lo asocia a Egipto, por eso le pregunté también por Egipto, y me dice que Egipto en particular no, que era África en general, porque Egipto también a su vez era influenciado por otros vecinos, que en general es África, que se traspasó a la cultura occidental a través de esos esclavos que tenían conocimiento de artes marciales.